Well, taking a look at shares of Estee Lauder plunging this morning after the beauty brand struggled with weakening sales in China during the first quarter, leading the company to slash its full-year outlook as its CEO expects incremental external headwinds to persist. Now, Estee Lauder shares are down over 50% so far this year, almost 60%. So Susan Anderson, Canaccord Genuity Managing Director, joins us now to break down what we've seen from this earnings report and what's been happening with Estee Lauder. So first, let's talk about some of the biggest contributors here that they cited. The slowdown in Asia travel retail, but especially China as well. What are your takeaways from where Estee Lauder goes from here?
Yeah, so it's really China and travel retail that drove, the worst results and the lower guidance for the year. If it wasn't for those two things, the rest of the business, in all regions saw growth. So they have about 30% exposure when you combine that travel retail and China business, and so that's really driving the weaker results versus competitors because of the higher exposure there. So, we expect that to continue into second quarter, which is why they lowered the numbers there. And then they're expecting an inflection in the back half of their fiscal year, which we're still uncertain whether or not that will happen. I think it really depends on macro in China and if we can see some better results there. But so far, we've been seeing things get worse.
Yeah, going into the results, Susan, you had a price target of $146 a share on the stock. I'm looking at where it's trading right now, roughly 105. Are you maintaining that given what we've heard from the company now?
Well, we've seen, earnings are going to come down significantly across the board once we see where the street lands, just because of, the lower guidance. So they lowered earnings guidance for the year to 217 to 242 versus their prior guidance of 350 to 375. So a pretty big cut there. So we'll have to see how things, pan out after the numbers come in.
And Susan, as you look at some of the strongest performing aspects of Estee Lauder's business, how does that stack up against some of these other sort of prestige and expensive cosmetic companies as well?
Yeah, so, we've heard China weakness across the board, really from all of Estee Lauder's competitors. It's just that Estee Lauder has higher exposure there. The prestige business in the U.S. continued to be very good. They said that growth in the U.S. was mid-single digit growth, so, fairly strong. And then also in other international markets, double digit growth. So, it's really that China, Asia travel business that's kind of weighing on their results. Otherwise, prestige continues to be strong elsewhere.
And is your expectation that that kind of momentum can be maintained? When you consider where the economy could be headed, certainly the recession calls seem to be pulled back, but the expectation is that consumers are becoming a little more discriminatory in what they buy.
Yeah, so, we've been waiting for prestige to pull back all year, really, as consumers get more and more pinched in the wallet, but we just have not seen that. I would expect it to slow somewhat, back down to, call it like mid to high single digit growth. Last quarter, it was still running in the double digit growth territory. But, I would think as we come up against tougher compares and the consumers get more and more pinched in the wallet, that, potentially we just see it more normalized, but it still does appear that they're buying prestige products.
And Susan, when people do sort of step back from prestige products, if they do like an e.l.f. or they decide to, look at The Ordinary that's also within Estee Lauder's holdings there, do those kinds of consumers tend to come back when things get better?
Yeah, they do. So, we've seen a very big increase, though, in masstige, particularly skincare products, sold at Target, which is right where Naturium sits, which is what e.l.f. bought a couple months ago. So, we think that there has been some trade down into that masstige category, not necessarily mass, but, a level above masstige. And that, could start to hurt prestige products a little bit. The question mark is, do they come back, I guess, afterwards? I think, you still get some better quality and better results with some higher end prestige products. So I do think the consumer still wants to buy those prestige products. They just have to pick and choose where they want to spend their money. And even as Ulta says, they're seeing more trade around the store. So consumers are really mixing and matching products more than what they used to, whereas they may buy some mass products, some masstige products, and then some prestige products. So they're really picking and choosing where they want to spend their dollars these days.
Susan Anderson, Canaccord Genuity Managing Director. Interesting insight there. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.